Oasis Audio presents Under the Cajun Moon by Mindy Starns Clark, read for you by Laural Merlington. 1. Ringing. Something somewhere was ringing and just wouldn't stop. Slowly I opened my eyes. As I came more fully awake, I realized that the ringing was a telephone, and that the telephone was on a bedside table next to my head. Blinking, I looked around, trying to remember where I was. Where was I? The ringing persisted. I fumbled for the phone with one hand, but the noise stopped before I could even lift the receiver. Licking dry, cracked lips, I let go of the phone and moved a hand to my forehead, feeling for a fever. My skin seemed cool, though I did have a splitting headache. What was wrong with me? More important, where was I and what was I doing here? Carefully I raised myself onto my elbows, my head throbbing with the effort. Looking around the dark room, it didn't seem familiar. To my right, judging by a thin rectangle of light, was a window covered by heavy drapes. Was I in a hospital? There were no machines running nearby, no tubes coming from my body. Looking down, I could see that I was fully dressed. At least I recognized my own theory suit, though the cream linen looked wrinkled in the dimness. Somehow I had a feeling that I wasn't in a hospital, but rather a hotel. Light. I needed light to figure this out. Ignoring the 1,000 pounds of mush inside my head, I sat all the way up. Making sure of my balance, I stood and stepped to the shades, pulling them open. "Oh!" I cried, covering my eyes with a hand. The glare was blinding. Fumbling frantically, I felt my way back to the bed and sat on the edge, my heart pounding. In all of my 32 years, I had never had anything like this happen to me, had never once woken up in a strange place without knowing how I had gotten there. After a few seconds, I lowered the hand from my eyes and gingerly opened them again, thinking that if this was a hangover, I must have had one doozy of a night. Except that I didn't get hangovers. I rarely even drank. Looking around, I felt sure I was in a hotel room, though it wasn't one I recognized. The decor was bland, if a little worn, and though there were no suitcases on the floor, my purse was sitting on the dresser. Standing again, I moved to it and looked inside, but nothing seemed amiss. My wallet was there, and a quick count of the cash it held assured me that no money was missing. Glancing around for some clue as to where I was, I spotted a small vinyl notebook imprinted with a fancy logo and the words Maison Charter. My own image in the mirror above the dresser caught my eye, and I paused to study it. I looked like me, or at least a disheveled, exhausted version of me. My long ash-blonde hair was a tangled mess, my blue eyes bloodshot and tired. Where was I, and how had I gotten here? Moving again toward the window, I placed my hands on the glass and looked out. I was on the first floor, and judging by the unique architecture outside, I was in New Orleans, the city of my youth. I wasn't familiar with this particular hotel, but given the name it was probably on Charter Street in the French Quarter. The French Quarter. Vague memories of yesterday began edging their way into my brain. My mother's phone call, my father's injury, my frantic flight from Chicago to New Orleans. From the airport, at my mother's insistence, I had driven to our family restaurant in the French Quarter to meet with my parents' lawyer and handle some paperwork before going to the hospital to see my father. I remember that much. Suddenly, the phone on the bedside table began to ring again. This time, I leaped toward it and snatched it up quickly. "Hello?" "Yes, hello, this is the front desk," a woman's voice said. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I thought I should tell you that the police are on their way to your room. They've been very persistent. Apparently, someone else in the hotel called in a complaint about noise." Noise? What noise? The only noise I had heard was the ringing of the phone. I wanted to ask if the woman knew how I had gotten here, but before I could even form a coherent question in my mind, there was a pounding at the door. I quickly concluded the
Sample complete. Ready to continue?